I'm Grace Mitchell, 35 years old, and the empty chair beside me at my husband's funeral wasn't just a symbol. It was a promise broken by the people who vowed they'd be there. While rain blurred the lilies and strangers offered hushed condolences, the ones who mattered most, his parents and my sister, were celebrating birthdays 15 miles away. That silence stung deeper than any eulogy. If you've ever been abandoned when you needed support most, tell me where you're watching from. And subscribe to stand with those who refuse to grieve alone. If this kind of story resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter. Let's begin. There was an empty chair beside me at my husband's funeral, and it wasn't just a metaphor. The rain had started early that morning, fine mist settling like grief over Westport. The funeral home was quiet, too quiet for the weight it carried. Daniel's photo stood on an easel near the front, framed by modest lilies and a candle that flickered as though unsure it should stay lit. People murmured condolences as they passed, most of them strangers to me, friends of Daniel from work or neighbors I barely recognized. But that chair, the one to my right, it stayed empty the whole service. I had reserved it for Gerald and Linda, Daniel's parents. They had promised to come. "Of course we'll be there," Linda had said. "Daniel deserves that much." But in the end, they didn't show. Nor did Brittany. Ella's small hand tugged at my black sleeve. "Mommy, why didn't Grandma and Grandpa come?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't know what to say. I squeezed her hand instead. Nathan sat behind us, quiet as ever. After the service, while Ella wandered among the guests looking for more cookies than closure, he stepped beside me, eyes heavy with something deeper than sadness. "They said they had a scheduling conflict," he murmured, almost ashamed. "But I'll help with whatever you need, Grace. Just say the word." I nodded, unable to find gratitude in the hollowness that had bloomed in my chest. Nathan's words were kind, but they couldn't patch the silence left by Gerald and Linda's absence, or the sting of Brittany's. Later that evening, back home, I sat on the edge of our bed with Ella curled beside me, already asleep. I opened my phone, unsure why. Maybe looking for distraction. Maybe hoping someone had remembered Daniel. What I found instead was a freshly posted photo of Brittany, draped in glitter, blowing out candles on a 3-tiered cake. Champagne glasses raised around her. The caption was bright and brutal. Some milestones deserve to be celebrated. I stared at it for minutes, long past the point my fingers had gone numb. The timestamp? 10 minutes before Daniel's service began. She'd been 15 miles away, throwing herself a birthday party. I didn't cry. I just pulled the curtains closed, locked the front door, and turned off every light in the house. That night, I made myself a silent promise, one louder than any eulogy. I would never let their silence dictate my grief again. My sister's birthday balloons were still floating in her photos when the bank called to confirm the transfer to the beneficiary. The wind rattled the windows as I stood in the kitchen, phone pressed to my ear. Outside, golden leaves swirled across the driveway, crisp and detached, just like Gerald and Linda had been since the funeral. I barely registered the voice on the other end until the banker repeated herself. "Yes, ma'am. The insurance policy was processed. The full amount was deposited into your account as listed. Grace Mitchell, primary and sole beneficiary." I muttered a thank you and hung up. My hand trembled slightly as I set the phone down. Daniel had told me to update the documents, just in case. "It's not being paranoid," he'd said one night after the hospital visit. "It's being a parent." The mail sat in an unruly pile on the console table, most of it unopened. But one envelope had a thick quality to it. Official. I tore it open. Inside, a typed letter from Gerald and Linda. No greeting, no reference to Daniel. Just, "We'd like to discuss a more balanced distribution of the insurance proceeds. We hope you will consider what's fair." I couldn't breathe for a moment. My mind replayed the funeral, the empty chair, Ella's question. And now this? Ella came down the stairs, backpack slightly crooked, eyes bright from school. She handed me a drawing with a proud little smile. "It's us," she said. "Our real family." There were 3 stick figures, one tall with long brown hair, one small with a heart on her shirt, and one with glasses and a big smile. Nathan. Before I could say anything, my voicemail chimed. "Grace, it's Brittany," came the syrupy voice, barely concealing venom. "I know you think it's all yours, but maybe you should reconsider before things get litigious. Just saying." I stared at the phone. Then I opened the voice memos app and hit record. I didn't know what they were planning, but I knew I wouldn't face it unarmed. Nathan texted shortly after sunset. "Just spoke to Graves. Daniel set everything up after that last hospital scare. He made sure you and Ella would be okay." I stared at the screen, tears rising. But it was gratitude this time. Bitter-edged, but real. The next morning, a package arrived. No sender. Just my name, handwritten in bold strokes. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a small wooden box. I opened it slowly, and there, beneath the fold of a worn handkerchief, was Daniel's handwriting on a folded letter. "If anything ever happens to me, make sure Ella never has to beg for love or dignity. Promise me that." I closed the box gently, heart breaking all over again. But this time, with purpose. That afternoon, as the rain picked up again and thunder rumbled in the distance, a new email pinged into my inbox. Not condolences, not an apology. Just a subject line that snapped like cold steel. Will reading. December 1st, 10 a.m. Graves and Bloom LLP. They thought I would cry in silence. Instead, I brought a file folder. Outside, the first snow of the season was beginning to settle along the windowsills of Graves and Bloom LLP. Inside, the conference room on the 3rd floor was all cold angles and monochrome decor, black and white prints on the walls, a round table surrounded by chairs too stiff to comfort anyone. No one offered me coffee. No one asked if I was warm enough. That was fine. I wasn't here for warmth. I wore the ivory wool coat Daniel had given me on our 6th anniversary. Not just to keep warm, but as armor. A reminder that I wasn't here alone. Not really. Daniel once told me, "Don't let them twist what's ours into something they can claim." Today, I plan to honor that. Michael Graves entered, precise and cordial as always. His eyes scanned the room quickly. Gerald and Linda sat directly across from me, dressed in somber grays like they were still playing mourners. Brittany was already sunk into her chair, oversized sunglasses masking her face, thumbs flying over her phone as if this were just another meeting she wanted to skip. Nathan sat behind me in silence, a steady presence. He didn't say a word, but I could feel his support like a quiet pulse. "Thank you all for coming," Graves began. "We're here today to read the last will and testament of Daniel Mitchell, signed and notarized on September 2nd of this year." Linda shifted in her seat. Gerald nodded slightly, as if he already knew what would be said. Graves continued. "All assets, real estate, financial accounts, insurance proceeds, business holdings, are to be left in their entirety to Grace Mitchell and Ella Mitchell as sole legal beneficiaries." Brittany let out a scoff, sharp as shattered glass. He must have been pressured. Daniel wouldn't leave everything to her. "This will," Graves replied without missing a beat, "was established under rigorous legal standards. We have witness statements, a recorded signing session, and follow-up documentation from his hospital stay in August." "I want it reviewed," Linda snapped. "This doesn't sound accurate." "You're free to pursue a review," Graves said, "after the reading is complete. But legally, I'm bound to proceed." I didn't speak. I reached into my bag and slid a thin gray folder across the table. "This," I said, "is what Daniel left behind too. Not just on paper, but in his own words." Graves opened the folder. Inside was a handwritten letter, Daniel's script, careful and unmistakable. Then Graves took out his phone and played the voicemail I had sent him earlier. Daniel's voice filled the room. Steady. Tender. "Gracie, if you're hearing this, then the worst has probably happened. I just need you to remember one thing. Don't let my parents turn our grief into their gain. I trust you. I always have." No one moved. For a moment, the room was as still as a sealed tomb. Outside, the wind picked up. Snow tapped against the glass like a whisper from the other side. I looked across the table at Brittany, then to Gerald. "I didn't come here to fight. I came to carry out my husband's will." They had expected me to fall apart, to argue, to beg, to flinch under pressure. But I didn't break. I didn't cry. And just as they thought it was over, I handed Graves the final document, the one Ella had written. They called me cold. Then my daughter handed them a bill for everything they never paid for. Snow had gathered thick along the edges of the window panes, blurring the view outside into a soft blur of white. Inside the conference room, the air was tense and unmoving, like the breath of everyone had been held since the moment Daniel's voice finished playing. I sat still. Calm on the surface, but my fingers were tight around my lap beneath the table. The voicemail had shaken them. That much was clear. Brittany had stopped tapping her phone, and Gerald's shoulders had slumped forward just slightly, like a man realizing he might have overplayed his hand. Even Linda, who had been so firm, now avoided my eyes. "Grace?" Graves finally said, as if trying to restart time. "Is there anything else you wish to submit?" I nodded once. Reaching into my bag, I took out a small blue envelope and slid it across the table. "This isn't mine," I said. "It's Ella's." The envelope was thick with folded pages, written in the precise scrawl of an 8-year-old who had taken her time. Graves looked at me, then at the others, before opening it. Ella had titled it in bold purple crayon, "Emotional Invoice." Each line was written with the simplicity of a child and the clarity of someone who had kept score quietly for years. 30 times no one picked me up from school. 300 minutes alone. 8 birthdays without a call. 8 wishes wasted. One Christmas where my name wasn't even mentioned. One heart that didn't forget. 3 times I asked if I could visit, and no one said yes. 3 tiny pieces of me that stopped trying. Gerald leaned forward, trying to laugh, though it came out like a cough. "She's just a child. You can't expect her to—" "She's not asking you for money," I said evenly. "She's not even asking you for time. She just wants you to know that she counted." Linda looked down at her hands. Brittany shifted uncomfortably. Graves read a few more lines in silence, then looked up. "There is no asset," he said softly, "that can balance out this emotional deficit." Ella walked in just then, quiet as a ghost, still in her pea coat and wool hat. She had insisted on coming with me, though I had told her she wouldn't need to go inside. But something must have shifted in her. She clutched Daniel's old leather bracelet around her wrist, the one he gave her on her last birthday. She stepped up beside me, looking directly at Gerald and Linda with a steadiness that pierced the room. "I'm not mad," she said, "but I don't forget." Linda's lips trembled. A tear finally rolled down her cheek, and she looked toward me with a pleading softness I hadn't seen in years. "Grace, maybe we could just start over, please. Give us one more chance." I looked at her, and for a moment I almost wanted to reach across. But I remembered the funeral, the empty chair, the silence, the voicemail, Ella's eyes. "This isn't about punishment," I said gently. "It's about ending my silence." They didn't respond. No one did. As we walked out of the building, the wind caught the edge of Ella's coat, lifting it like wings. I held her hand tighter, feeling the warmth of her palm against mine. Graves followed us to the door and handed me a letter. I glanced at it. It was from a nonprofit group, one Daniel had once supported, asking if I would consider founding a fund in his name. When we stepped into the snow-covered sidewalk, I knew this wasn't a closure. It was the beginning of new semesters. They wanted forgiveness. I gave them boundaries. The first snow had melted into a slick sheen over the stone path leading to my front door. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cinnamon. Ella had insisted on baking something cheerful. She was upstairs now, probably doodling in her sketchbook, unaware that a fragile gathering was about to begin downstairs. Nathan had organized it. He said it was time. Said everyone needed to talk. I stood by the window, arms folded, watching the driveway fill with familiar silhouettes. Gerald stepped out first, clutching a worn leather folder. Linda followed, her coat too thin for the cold. Brittany came last, sunglasses perched like armor, a smirk already forming as she texted someone. They filed into the living room without invitation. Nathan poured tea. I offered nothing more than a nod. "So," Gerald began, taking the seat across from me, "we've been thinking about a path forward." I said nothing. "We propose pooling the insurance funds," he continued. "It would be invested under my management, for Ella's future, for Daniel's legacy." A beat of silence. "I'm not interested," I said calmly. "But I have something for you." I slid a printed document across the coffee table. 3 pages. Simple language, clear lines. I call it a personal boundary agreement. 3 clauses. Non-negotiable. Brittany snorted. "What is this, a ceasefire treaty?" "Yes," I said, locking eyes with her. "And I'm the only one in this family who understands what happens when boundaries are only spoken, not signed." Gerald squinted at the first clause. 1. No communication with Ella without my written consent. He shifted uncomfortably, moving to the second. 2. No public reference to Daniel's assets, character, or life in any capacity, spoken, written, or implied. Linda's lips parted, ready to object, but I raised one hand. 3. No use of the Mitchell name in business, media, or legal actions without prior written approval from me or my representative. The air stiffened. "You're weaponizing grief," Brittany hissed. "No," I replied. "I'm protecting what's left of it." They fumbled. Gerald started talking about family spirit and working things out. Linda asked if this was really necessary. Brittany muttered something about lawyers and overreactions. Then Nathan stood. He walked over to the coffee table, picked up a pen, and signed the last page. "I'm Daniel's brother," he said, "and I support this. Grace has held more dignity in all this than any of us deserve." The room went still. Gerald looked wounded. Linda, quietly heartbroken. Brittany, for once, was silent. That night, after they left, I sat beside Ella's bed. She was asleep, her breathing soft and even. Around her wrist, she still wore Daniel's old bracelet, its leather worn smooth from months of wear. I pulled the quilt up higher over her shoulder and whispered, "He'd be proud of you. He'd be proud of us." That night, as snow returned to the windowsill, I knew. This wasn't retaliation. It was reclamation. They threw parties. I had a purpose. The community library in Westport was quiet that morning, save for the soft rustling of folding chairs being arranged and the hum of a nearby heater fighting off the January chill. Outside, the snow had settled into clean white drifts, untouched and serene. Inside, however, something deeply personal was about to take place. The walls had been transformed for the occasion. Photographs hung in simple wooden frames, Daniel smiling beside Ella on a swing set, Daniel and me clinking mugs of cider one Halloween, a candid snapshot of all 3 of us watching fireworks. They weren't perfect pictures, but they were real. There was no RSVP from Gerald or Linda. Brittany didn't even acknowledge the invitation. It didn't matter. This moment wasn't for them. The ceremony began with a soft chime of piano notes, followed by a short video clip. Daniel, holding a coffee mug, laughing. "I want to talk about someone," he said into the camera. "There's this single mom I know. She's raising a bright, kind kid. She doesn't complain. She doesn't crumble. She just shows up every day. And that, to me, is real strength." The screen faded to black. Silence. Then Michael Graves stepped forward. "Today we honor not just Daniel Mitchell, but the values he believed in. Dignity, resilience, and the quiet kind of leadership that doesn't ask for recognition. The Daniel Mitchell Fund will provide grants to single parents who've lost a spouse, because healing should come with support. I walked up to the podium. My heart was steady. "This isn't revenge," I began. "This is a restoration, a rebuilding, so that my daughter will grow up knowing that love isn't something owed or earned. It's something given freely, voluntarily." A few tears shimmered in the front row. Nathan stepped up next, holding a check. He handed it to a woman in her 40s, eyes rimmed red, clutching a child's hand. "She lost her husband to COVID," he said. "This is our first grant." Applause. Ella stood by my side, solemn and composed. From her small purse, she pulled out Daniel's leather bracelet, its cord worn but intact. She placed it gently into a velvet-lined memory box on a pedestal near the photos. Then we unveiled the plaque. Etched in brass, it read, "In honor of Daniel Mitchell, a husband, a father, and a man who showed up." The room held its breath. Later, as guests lingered with cider and soft conversations, I sat in the corner watching Ella laugh with a librarian. Nathan caught my eye and nodded. On our way out, I opened one last email on my phone. It was from Gerald. "We will respect your wishes." I didn't reply. There are debts money can't settle. But sometimes healing feels like a room full of strangers who finally understand.